Chapter 13. Link and Tal stepped into the stockpot inn, the warm glow of lanterns casting a soft light across the wooden interior. The air smelled faintly of aged wood and fresh bread, and the quiet murmur of voices from the dining area added a sense of comfort to the space. A large wooden counter stood at the center of the lobby, with a neatly kept guest book resting atop it. Behind the counter, a young woman with auburn hair stood distracted, her gaze fixed on something unseen. After a moment, she seemed to realize she had visitors and quickly straightened, offering a polite bow. "Welcome to the Stockpot Inn," she said, her voice warm but carrying a hint of distraction. "Do you have a reservation? What's your name?" The woman was already perusing the ledger on the desk. Tattle fluttered forward. "Link." But, she started, prepared to explain they hadn't made any reservations. Before she could finish, the young woman brightened and interrupted. "Oh yes. We have your reservation right here, Mr. Link." She turned, scanning the guest book, then nodded to herself. "Please wait just a moment while I fetch the key." She moved around the counter and returned shortly, a brass key in hand. "This way, please," she said, leading them down a short hallway and up a flight of stairs. The walls were lined with faded yet charming wallpaper, and the soft creak of the floorboards echoed as they walked. Finally, she stopped at a door, unlocking it with a quiet click before turning back to them. "My name is Unju," she said, bowing again. "If you need anything, please don't hesitate to ask." Link nodded and stepped inside. The room was small but cozy, with a simple wooden bed against one wall, a nightstand with an oil lamp, and a small table with a single chair. A narrow window let in a faint glow from the outside, casting soft shadows across the room. "I didn't know you made a reservation. When did you have time to do that?" Tattle asked, slightly annoyed. Link barely had time to take it all in before his exhaustion caught up with him. He set his gear down, sank onto the bed, and before he could even pull the covers over himself, sleep claimed him instantly. A few hours passed before Link stirred, his eyes fluttering open as muffled footsteps echoed outside his door. Distant music drifted through the wooden walls, a soft but lively tune that mixed with the hushed sounds of people moving about. For a brief moment, Link forgot where he was, his weary mind pulling him back to memories of home, the gentle rustling of leaves, the warm glow of fireflies in Kokiri Forest. But as the scent of aged wood and the distant chatter of town life filtered in, reality returned. Tattle, who had been resting near the nightstand, let out a small groan. "Ugh, what's with all the racket?" she muttered, her wings flickering to life as she hovered beside Link. Link sat up, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. The music continued, a steady, rhythmic melody carried by some kind of instrument he couldn't quite place. He stood, stretched briefly, and opened the door, stepping into the softly lit hallway. Just outside, a young woman in a dance uniform paced back and forth, muttering under her breath as she moved. She carried herself with an air of focus, repeating small, deliberate motions with her hands as if trying to work through something in her mind. Her expression was one of deep concentration, completely unaware of Link's presence. Curious, Link turned toward the source of the music, following the sound down the hallway to a larger room. Inside, another girl dressed in a similar dance outfit practiced slow, measured steps, her movements simple but graceful. Across from her, a man sat comfortably on a bed, cradling a peculiar instrument with a crank. As he turned it, the device emitted a warm, winding melody, its mechanical parts spinning in rhythm. Something about the man looked oddly familiar to Link. His eccentric, animated demeanor was unmistakable, his bright, lively eyes, the way he swayed with his own music as if lost in its rhythm. The man glanced up and beamed.
"Ah,
a new face," he exclaimed, his voice as cheery as the tune he played. "Welcome, welcome. You've stumbled into a most sacred art, dance and melody, in harmony as they should be." He strummed another note and then motioned toward the girls. "You see, the Rosa sisters here are working on a brand new dance for the Carnival of Time, just 3 days away. And me? Well, I provide the inspiration, of course. Music to stir the soul and move the feet." He gave the instrument another turn, grinning. The magic of a melody, my young friend. It guides the heart, don't you think? The man's eyes flickered with interest as he glanced down at Link's belt. What have we here? He mused, setting his instrument aside. That's quite the instrument you carry, my young friend. Do you know any tunes? Link hesitated for a moment, then reached for his ocarina, its smooth surface cool against his fingertips. He lifted it to his lips and played the Sonata of Awakening, the clear notes resonating through the room. The man nodded along, tapping his foot in time with the melody. Encouraged, Link transitioned into the Goron lullaby, the soothing tune filling the space with an air of quiet nostalgia. As the last note faded, the Rosa sister practicing her steps let out an irritated scoff. No, that won't do at all. You're ruining my concentration, she huffed, crossing her arms. The man chuckled, waving a dismissive hand. Don't mind her. Artists, you know, always searching for perfection. He picked up his instrument once more, resuming his tune with a playful hum. Realizing there was nothing more to do here, Link placed his ocarina back at his belt and made his way toward the exit. As he passed the front desk, Anju offered a polite bow. Thank you for staying with us, she said softly. Just as Link reached for the door, it swung open violently, nearly hitting him. A red-clad figure burst through without hesitation, a man in a postal uniform, moving with sharp, deliberate purpose. Without acknowledging anyone in the room, he strode directly to the front desk and produced a letter with precise movements. A letter for you, he stated flatly, his tone brisk and efficient. Anju blinked in confusion, taking the envelope from his gloved hand. As she turned it over, her expression shifted, first to surprise, then to something more uncertain. She clutched the letter close, her mind already elsewhere. Thank you, she murmured, though the postman had already turned on his heel, exiting just as swiftly as he had arrived. Without another word, Anju retreated into the back room, leaving Link and Tatl exchanging glances as the atmosphere in the inn subtly shifted. As the door to the inn swung shut behind them, Tatl hovered close to Link's shoulder, glancing back at the desk where Anju had disappeared. Something's definitely weird around here, but hey, not our business, right? She muttered, shaking her head. Come on, let's go. Link stepped onto the stone streets of Clock Town, nearly tripping over a Goron sitting against the wall of the inn, lost in sleep. The afternoon sun beaming down, lighting up the plaza. He adjusted his belt, and before he made 2 steps, a voice called out to him. Hey, you there? With the sword. Link turned to see a bald man standing outside the milk bar, dressed in a well-kept bartender's uniform. He scratched his head and gave Link a friendly, albeit concerned, look. Sorry to bother you, kid. Name's Mr. Barton. I run the milk bar here. Say, I noticed you're carrying some serious weaponry. His brow furrowed slightly. Would you happen to be heading toward Romani Ranch? Link tilted his head. Barton sighed. See, my delivery from the ranch hasn't come in, and that's not like them. I know the girls over there, Cremia and her little sister Romani. Good folks. They always get the milk to me on time, but this time nothing. I'm starting to get real worried. Tatl fluttered ahead, crossing her tiny arms. Look, we're kinda busy with. She stopped mid-sentence and turned toward Link, who was already watching the man with quiet understanding. All right, fine. Tatl relented with a small sigh. We'll check it out for you. Barton's expression brightened. Really? That's a load off my mind. He stepped forward, shaking Link's hand firmly. Thank you, kid. Just head south out of town and follow the road. Can't miss it. With a final nod of appreciation, Barton stepped back and began sweeping the ground outside his bar, clearly more relaxed. Link and Tatl turned toward the town's southern gate, ready to make their way toward Romani Ranch. Chapter 14. Link trudged down the road, leading out of Clock Town. Tatl fluttered beside him, the soft jingling of her wings filling the quiet space between them. The air was fresh, carrying the scent of grass and distant hay, a stark contrast to the busy city they had just left behind. As they neared a fork in the road, 2 figures stepped into view, their presence breaking the serene moment. 2 men in matching brown coats stood with arms crossed, leaning lazily against a worn wooden signpost. Their horses grazed nearby, their dark eyes watching Link approach. "Hey, kid," one of the men called out, his voice thick with an uninviting smugness. "You heading to Romani Ranch?" Link slowed his pace but said nothing. "You might want to rethink that," the other chimed in with a chuckle, his arms still crossed. "No one's going to be visiting that place for much longer." The first man smirked, his mustache shifting with his expressions. "But our ranch? Gorman Brothers Ranch? Now, that's a place worth stopping by. Best horses, best races, best milk." Tattle huffed and flicked her wings. Link stepped around them without hesitation, their laughter echoing behind him as he pressed forward. The path ahead was lined with rustic fences, and soon, a familiar wooden archway came into view. A sign swayed gently overhead, reading, "Romani Ranch." But as Link neared the entrance, he came to an abrupt halt. A massive boulder, jagged and immovable, blocked the road entirely. A man stood nearby, chipping away at the rock with a pickaxe, his face glistening with sweat. He turned at the sound of Link's footsteps, resting on his tool with a sigh. You're looking to get through here, aren't you?" the worker said, shaking his head. "I hate to tell you this, but this thing's gonna take at least 2 days to clear." "No way around it." Tattle darted around the boulder in frustration. 2 days? We don't have that kind of time." Link didn't respond. Instead, he reached into his bag, fingers closing around the smooth metal of a bomb. The worker's eyes widened as Link withdrew a handful of explosives, methodically placing them around the base of the boulder. "Hey, kid, what exactly are you doing?" the man stammered, stepping back. Link didn't answer. He simply took out his bow, knocked a fire arrow, and loosed it. The arrow struck its mark, and a fiery explosion tore through the air. Smoke and dust billowed as shards of rock went flying. When the chaos settled, only scattered rubble remained where the boulder once stood, the path beyond now completely clear. The worker stood frozen, mouth slightly open. "Well, that's one way to do it," he muttered, brushing dust from his shirt. Without another word, Link stepped forward, crossing into Romani Ranch. Stepping past the remnants of the shattered boulder, Link took his first steps into Romani Ranch. The scent of fresh hay and sun-warmed earth filled the air, a stark contrast to the damp chill of Snowhead or the poisonous swamp. A vast, open field stretched before him, enclosed by wooden fences that had seen better days. In the distance, a 2-story farmhouse stood, its rustic walls painted in faded reds and whites, a welcoming sight against the golden hues of the late afternoon sky. Beside it, a sturdy barn loomed, its doors slightly ajar, revealing the silhouettes of grazing cattle inside. A gentle breeze rustled through the tall grass, carrying with it the distant hum of insects and the occasional call of birds preparing to settle in for the evening. The whole place felt quiet, peaceful, yet beneath the serenity, something felt off, and yet familiar. Then, a sharp, familiar sound cut through the stillness. A high-pitched neigh, filled with recognition and longing. Link's heart skipped. He knew that voice. Without hesitation, he bolted across the open field, his boots kicking up dust as he ran toward a wooden stable near the farmhouse. The scent of hay grew stronger, mingling with the earthy musk of horses. He skidded to a stop before the stable's gate, and there, standing inside, was Epona. The small horse bounced excitedly on her hooves, tossing her head with a cheerful whinny, her deep brown eyes bright with recognition. She pressed her muzzle against the wooden gate, ears flicking forward, eager to reach him. Link's breath caught in his throat. He hadn't seen her since he fell into this strange world. Tattle hovered beside him, flickering at the sight. "Wait, is that your horse? How did she even get here?" she wondered aloud. Link slowly stepped closer, reaching out his hand. Epona nickered and nudged against his palm, warm and familiar. After everything, the darkness, the monsters, the endless cycle of time, here was something that was truly his. Soft, quick footsteps approached from behind, light against the packed dirt. Link spun around, his hand instinctively hovering near his sword hilt, but the sight before him was anything but threatening. A young girl with bright red hair and wide, curious eyes stood a few paces away, her hands clasped behind her back in an innocent, carefree stance. Beside her, a small dog with scruffy white fur wagged its tail excitedly, its beady eyes fixed on Link with unshaken trust. The girl beamed. Do you know this horse? She's been restless all day. She kept running around like she was looking for someone. She tilted her head slightly.
I've Romani.
And this here is my family's ranch. Her voice carried a confidence beyond her years, yet there was an unmistakable innocence in the way she spoke. Tattle hovered beside Link. She must have wandered here from somewhere, she mused, still surprised to see Epona here at all after how the Skull Kid.
Romani nodded.
My sister, Cremia, found her this morning, running around the pasture trying to get out. She looked kinda lost, so we took her in. We've been feeding her and taking care of her all day. She giggled, rubbing the back of her head. She's a real sweetheart. But she seems happiest now that you're here. Link reached out and stroked Epona's muzzle. She leaned into his touch, letting out a soft snort of approval. A warmth filled his chest. Despite everything, she was still his loyal companion. Romani tapped her chin in thought. Say, is this horse really yours? She suddenly perked up, grinning. How about a little test? If you can ride her well and prove she's yours, I'll let you take her. Tattle huffed. Really? That's your condition?
Romani nodded eagerly.
Of course. A horse and her rider need to trust each other. If she's really yours, it'll show. Without waiting for an answer, she unlatched the stable gate and led Epona out. The small horse trotted forward eagerly, as if she already knew what was coming. Link didn't hesitate. With one smooth motion, he swung himself up onto Epona's back. The moment he settled in, she whinnied and took off, cantering across the open pasture with perfect ease. The wind brushed against Link's face as he guided her in smooth circles, weaving between wooden fences and galloping across the wide, sunlit field. Every movement was effortless, natural. He barely needed to guide her at all. Romani clapped her hands together in delight. Wow, you two really do belong together. She stood back, watching as Link and Epona moved as one, the little dog at her side barking excitedly. As Link slowed Epona to a stop, Romani grinned up at him, clearly impressed. Then, her gaze flickered to the bow slung across his back. Her eyes lit up with an idea. Say, she started, tilting her head mischievously. How about another test? Tattle groaned. Oh, come on. Romani ignored her and pointed across the ranch. Scattered throughout the open fields were several strange, red balloons, bobbing slightly in the breeze. I set these up for practice, Romani explained. Think you can pop them all while riding? She crossed her arms, her playful smirk growing. If you're really a great rider, this should be easy. Link nodded, gripping the bow and drawing an arrow in one smooth motion. He nudged Epona forward and took aim. With practiced precision, he loosed an arrow, striking the first balloon dead center. The rubber burst with a sharp pop, sending shreds fluttering to the ground. Link spurred Epona into a steady gallop, shifting his aim from target to target. He hit each balloon in quick succession, barely needing to slow down. Red scraps littered the field by the time he reached the last one, shattering it with a final well-placed shot. Romani watched, slack-jawed, as Link rode back toward her. When he pulled Epona to a stop, she threw her arms in the air. Wow, that was amazing, Tattle muttered, satisfied now. Romani didn't answer. Her excitement faded, replaced by a sudden seriousness that didn't match her usual bubbly demeanor. She took a small step closer to Link, lowering her voice. Say, you're really good with a bow, she murmured, hesitating for the first time. Then she looked up, determination in her eyes. Would you help me protect the ranch? Link blinked. Tattle hovered a little closer. Protect it? From what? Romani took a deep breath. From them. She paused, letting the weight of the words settle. They come every year, right before the carnival, she explained, voice hushed. Strange beings that move all silent-like. With big, empty eyes, she hugged her arms. And they try to take our cows. They always come at night. Romani shook her head. No one believes me. But I know they're real. I saw them last year, she looked back at Link. If you help me, we can stop them this time. I just know it. Before Link could answer, a new voice cut in. Romani, are you telling those stories again? A young woman, taller and more mature looking than Romani, approached them with a sigh. Her long light red hair swayed as she walked, her expression a mix of amusement and exasperation. Romani puffed out her cheeks. It's not a story, Cremia. Cremia folded her arms. You're scaring our guest, so I guess the boulder has been removed, just in time for tomorrow. She turned to Link with an apologetic smile. Sorry about her. She loves making up these wild tales. Then Cremia realized Epona was standing next to Link. Oh, so she's your horse? They're not tales. Romani interrupted with the stomp of her foot. You'll see. Cremia chuckled, ruffling Romani's hair despite the younger girl's protests. Tatl sighed. Well, this sure is something. Link simply watched the exchange, realizing that Romani was completely serious, whether or not her sister believed her. Cremia glanced up at the sky, the sun dipping lower behind the hills. The warm golden hues of the late afternoon were already giving way to deep purples and blues. She sighed, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. It's getting late, she said, turning to Link. Why don't you stay the night here? It's safer than traveling in the dark, and now that the boulder is gone, I'll be making my milk delivery to Clocktown in the morning. You can ride with me then. Romani clapped her hands together excitedly. Yes, please stay. Link nodded without hesitation. After the long day, the thought of resting in a warm, safe place was more than welcome. Romani beamed and Cremia chuckled. All right then, let's get you something to eat. As the last of the sunlight faded, Link found himself at a sturdy wooden table inside the farmhouse, sharing a hearty meal with the two sisters. The air smelled of fresh bread and stew, the warm glow of lanterns casting soft light across the room. Romani talked endlessly between bites, rambling about all sorts of things. How she planned to be a great rancher like her sister, her training with her bow, and, of course, more about them. Cremia mostly rolled her eyes but let her talk, clearly used to her sister's antics. After dinner, Cremia led Link to the barn, where a soft pile of hay had been prepared for him in an open stall. It's not much, she admitted, but it's warm and safe. Link gave a grateful nod, already feeling the exhaustion creeping in. As he settled into the hay, Tatl whispered, Finally, some real rest. The barn was quiet, save for the occasional sound of cows shifting in their pens. The scent of hay and earth surrounded him, comforting in its simplicity. Within moments, Link drifted into sleep. But it didn't last long. A sudden, frantic shaking jolted him awake. Small hands grasped his shoulders, shaking him harder. Wake up! Wake up! Link's eyes snapped open to see Romani, wide-eyed and pale, her red hair messy from running. Her dog barked wildly outside, a sharp and panicked sound. Link sat up, instantly alert. Tatl's glow flickered anxiously beside him. Romani's voice trembled as she spoke. It's them. Without hesitation, Link leapt to his feet and sprinted outside. The night air was thick and still. The once peaceful pasture was now bathed in an eerie, unnatural glow. And then he saw them. Floating, silent, otherworldly figures drifted across the field, their luminous forms pulsing in the darkness. Their hollow, empty eyes locked onto the barn, moving forward in an unbroken, ghostly procession. Tatl gasped. Oh no, it wasn't her imagination. Romani clutched her bow tightly, her small frame trembling. We have to stop them, she whispered. Link sprinted across the pasture, his boots kicking up the dry earth beneath him as he leaped onto Epona. She neighed and reared up slightly, sensing the urgency in the air. With a firm grip, Link steered her forward, reaching over his shoulder for his bow. The eerie glow of the creatures pulsed across the field like slow-moving flames, their forms drifting ever closer to the barn. Link took a deep breath, nocking an arrow and pulling back the bowstring. His aim was steady, his heart hammering in his chest. He let the arrow fly. With a soft thunk, the glowing entity recoiled violently, its shape twisting as a flash of light consumed it. Then it was gone, reduced to nothing more than fading embers. Epona galloped across the pasture, her hooves pounding against the earth, her trust with her rider. Link turned, quickly loosing another arrow at a creature creeping in from the left. Another hit, another burst of light. He pivoted again, scanning the field. There were too many. He guided Epona into a fast loop, his bow at the ready. One after another, he struck them down. Every shot landed true, and yet they kept coming, drifting ever forward, silent and relentless. Minutes turned into an hour. The cold, oppressive darkness of the night stretched on. The eerie glow of them never wavered. Their hollow eyes never faltered. Link's arm burned from the constant pull of the bowstring, his breaths coming in short bursts. The creatures were still closing in. Then, a bark. Link's head snapped toward the farmhouse. Behind it, near the trees, Romani's dog stood rigid, barking furiously at something lurking in the shadows. A lone figure, floating just beyond the fence. It was nearly at the barn. Link grit his teeth and urged Epona forward, pulling another arrow from his quiver. His hands moved instinctively, and before he even had time to think, the shot had already been fired. The arrow found its mark. The creature convulsed, its glow pulsing wildly before it too shattered into fading light. Then, a golden sliver of sunlight peeked over the horizon. The moment the first rays of dawn touched the pasture, the remaining creatures froze. Their hollow, piercing gazes turned skyward as their luminous bodies began to distort. One by one, they collapsed into themselves, transforming into swirling beads of light. The scattered orbs drifted together, swirling in slow unison above the farm before spiraling high into the sky, vanishing into the morning sun. A deep, cleansing silence fell over the ranch. For a moment, Link remained in place, breathing hard, his fingers still curled around the bowstring. The only sound was the gentle wind rustling through the pasture. Then, Romani burst out of the barn, her face beaming with victory. "We did it!" she shouted, arms thrown up in triumph. "We really did it!" She ran toward Link as he dismounted, practically bouncing on her feet. "You saved us. You really saved us." She turned back to the empty sky, hands on her hips. "Ha! That'll teach them." Tattle, still floating by Link's shoulder, let out a breathy chuckle. "Well, I gotta admit, that was impressive." Romani turned back, grinning from ear to ear. "Come on, hero. Let's go tell Cremia the good news." Chapter 15. Link followed Romani into the farmhouse, where the warm scent of fresh bread and milk filled the air. The wooden interior was cozy, bathed in the soft glow of the early morning sun filtering through the windows. At the table, Cremia was already up, tying her apron as she set out breakfast. Before Cremia could even look up, Romani ran to her side, her words tumbling out in an excited rush. "Sis, we did it. They came, just like I said they would." But he was amazing. He rode around the whole ranch, shooting arrows faster than I could even see. Pow! Bam! He got every single one of them. And then, when the sun came up, poof, they were gone. Cremia glanced at Link and Tattle, then back at her sister, her expression soft but unreadable. She let out a small laugh, ruffling Romani's hair. "Well, sounds like you two had quite the adventure." Romani nodded enthusiastically, bouncing on her toes. "We really did. The ranch is safe, thanks to us." Cremia smiled, her tone affectionate yet laced with something unspoken. "Thank you, Romani. I don't know what we'd do without our little protector." Romani beamed, completely oblivious to the way her sister's words felt more like humoring than believing. Tattle, hovering near Link's shoulder, shifted slightly, as if she noticed it too. Cremia turned her attention to Link. "And thank you, too. I don't know exactly what you did, but it means a lot that you stayed the night." Romani certainly seems happier for it. She reached for a basket of bread and milk, setting it down on the table. "Help yourself to some breakfast before we head out." After eating a simple but filling meal, Link followed Creamia outside as she began preparing for the trip to Clocktown. Stacked beside the barn were large wooden crates filled with bottles of fresh milk, their glass glistening with condensation in the cool morning air. Creamia rolled up her sleeves and motioned for Link to help. With careful movements, the two worked together, lifting the heavy crates onto the back of the wagon. Romani stayed nearby, still bursting with excitement as she chattered about how proud she was of their victory, barely noticing the way her sister responded with small nods and distracted hums. Once the last crate was secured, Creamia patted the side of the wagon. "That should do it." She turned to Link, dusting her hands off on her skirt. "If you're still up for it, you can ride along with me. I could use the company. And don't worry, we'll bring your horse along too." Link nodded, and as Creamia climbed into the driver's seat, he mounted the wagon beside her. Epona, now tied to the back, let out a soft whinny, ready to follow. The wheels creaked as the wagon began to roll forward, the early morning sun casting golden light across the ranch. The gentle sway of the cart and the rhythmic sound of hooves on dirt made for a peaceful start to the journey, but after a few moments of quiet, Creamia let out a slow sigh. "I don't know what's going to happen to this place," she admitted, keeping her eyes on the road ahead. Link glanced at her, listening. Creamia gave a small, sad smile. "The ranch has been struggling. We used to have more help, more deliveries, but things have been getting harder. Fewer customers, fewer people even coming out this way, even before the boulder." She hesitated, her grip on the reins tightening slightly. Her head tilted up. "What have you heard about the moon? Isn't it lower than it was before? Maybe I've been stuck on the ranch too long. I've lost touch a bit. I can tell." She shook her head, her voice quieter now. "I try to act like everything's normal for Romani, but I don't know how much longer we can keep this place running." There was a long pause, the steady clatter of wheels against the dirt road filling the silence. Then, Creamia let out a small, breathy chuckle. "Sorry. That's probably a lot to unload on you first thing in the morning." Tattle, for once, didn't have a quip. She just hovered near Link, unusually quiet. Creamia sighed again, softer this time, keeping her remaining thoughts to herself. The wagon rolled on, the road stretching ahead toward Clocktown. The wagon trundled along the dirt road, passing through the narrow canyon just outside the ranch. The tall rock walls on either side cast long shadows in the dim morning light, and a strange stillness settled over the path. Even the wind had quieted, leaving only the soft creak of wooden wheels and the rhythmic clatter of hooves. Creamia's hands tightened around the reins, her eyes scanning the canyon walls. Something felt off. She pulled the wagon to a slow stop, glancing at Link. "I think you should get on your horse." Link nodded, immediately understanding. He hopped off the wagon and untied Epona, swinging onto her back with ease. Just as he took his place riding alongside the cart, a sudden, blood-curdling scream tore through the silence. From the bushes ahead, two figures burst onto the road, their horses kicking up dust as they charged straight for the wagon. They wore dark cloaks and masks that concealed their faces, their eyes hidden beneath shadowed fabric. Each one brandished a crude pitchfork, aiming it toward the wagon as they closed the distance. Creamia shouted, snapping the reins. The horses surged forward, pulling the wagon at a breakneck pace. Link spurred Epona into a gallop, keeping close to the side of the cart as the masked riders gave chase. The first attacker veered dangerously close, swinging his pitchfork at the wooden crates. Link kicked forward, steering Epona between them and swinging his sword in a defensive arc. The man recoiled, yanking his horse away just in time to avoid the strike. The second rider came from the other side, his pitchfork jabbing toward the stacked bottles. Link ducked low, reaching for his bow, but before he could nock an arrow, the first attacker made another move. The tip of Link's sword caught the edge of the man's hood, yanking it back as he reeled away. The fabric fluttered in the wind before landing in Link's lap. His eyes flicked down for only a second, but it was enough. The man's face was now exposed. It was one of the Gorman brothers. His eyes went wide, then darkened with fury as he jerked the reins of his horse, pulling away sharply to cover his face. His companion, seeing what had happened, let out a frustrated growl. Link raised his bow, an arrow drawn and ready. He aimed not to harm, but to warn. The sharp point of the arrow glinted in the morning light, steady and unshaking. The message was clear. The Gorman brothers exchanged a look, then yanked their horses back. Without another word, they turned and vanished into the dust, retreating into the canyon from where they came. Cremia exhaled, her grip on the reins finally loosening. She turned to Link, her expression a mix of relief and exhaustion. That was close. Link nodded, keeping pace alongside the wagon. The rest of the journey continued in silence, the road to Clock Town finally opening before them. The strange mask the assailants wore still sat in Link's lap. He quickly tucked the fabric away in his bag as he rode along the cart to Clock Town. The rest of the journey passed in quiet relief. The morning sun had fully risen now, casting a golden glow over the land as the wagon rolled steadily toward Clock Town. The dust from the chase had long settled, and the distant sounds of the waking city grew louder with each passing minute. When they finally arrived at the entrance to town, Cremia guided the wagon toward the milk bar, where Mr. Barton was already waiting. He greeted them with a warm smile and immediately set to work helping unload the heavy milk crates. Link assisted, lifting and stacking them neatly as Barton wiped his brow and gave a satisfied nod. "Well now, this should last us just fine," Barton said, clapping his hands together. "Always appreciate your deliveries, Cremia." He turned to Link and gave an approving nod. "And it seems you had a good escort this time. Fine work, kid." With that, Barton took the last crate inside, leaving the two of them standing beside the empty wagon. A quiet stillness settled between them. The city bustled just beyond the gate, but here, in this small pocket of space, it felt separate, like a moment frozen in time. Cremia turned to Link, her expression soft, her lips parting slightly as if searching for the right words. Then, without hesitation, she took a step forward and pulled him into an embrace. Link barely had time to react before he felt the warmth of her arms around him, his head gently pressed against her chest. Her grip was firm but tender, like she was holding onto something precious, something she didn't want to let slip away. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice quiet but filled with emotion. "You may never know how grateful I am that you arrived when you did." She held him there for just a moment longer, then finally released him. As Link stepped back, he caught the briefest glimpse of a tear forming at the corner of her eye. But before it could fall, she wiped it away with the back of her hand, forcing a small smile. "Take care of yourself, okay?" she said. Link gave a small nod before turning to leave, stepping into the streets of Clock Town as the morning carried on around him. "You know, it makes you think." Tatl spoke softly. "We've reversed the flow of time, living these exact 3 days over and over. What do you think happened to the ranch during those previous cycles? What will happen to Cremia and Romani the last 3 days before the cycle breaks if we don't visit them? If those things show up again on the ranch but Romani is alone? It's sad to think about, all of these people you help and yet." Tatl went quiet, following along as Link continued his journey. Chapter 16. Riding Epona across the open field, Link felt the cool morning breeze against his face. Tatl hovered beside him, her wings glowing softly in the sunlight. "The ocean is the next place we should check out," she said, glancing toward the southern edge of Termina Field. "There's bound to be something strange going on there, just like everywhere else." Link nudged Epona forward, galloping across the grassy expanse. A few stray peahats buzzed in the distance, their massive wings kicking up dirt, but they kept their distance. As they neared the coastline, a series of stone fences blocked the path to the beach. With a firm grip, Link leaned forward, and Epona leaped gracefully over each obstacle, landing smoothly on the sandy shore. As they approached the beach, the salty breeze carried the sound of crashing waves. The blue skies of Termina Field were gone as a cloudy fog seemed to hang over the ocean with an unnatural stillness. The water, while normal, seemed more gray and lifeless despite itself. There was a light breeze casting over the water, yet the clouds seemed to move with a haste of their own. As they looked out at the ocean, something else caught Tal's attention. "Hey, what's that?" She darted forward, her glow flickering with concern. Just offshore, a small flock of seagulls circled over the water, their sharp cries echoing against the cliffs. Without hesitation, Link ran toward the water and jumped in, the cool waves rushing around him. As he swam closer, he could see a figure floating just beneath the surface, a Zora, barely moving. His head bobbed weakly as the current pushed him toward shore. Link grasped the Zora's arm, pulling him through the water with steady strokes. As they reached the sand, Link dragged him onto the beach, the Zora's chest rising and falling in shallow, labored breaths. His skin was pale, his limbs weak, but he was still alive. Tatl hovered closer, her voice filled with urgency. "Is he okay? He looks awful." The Zora coughed, his gills fluttering as he struggled to speak. His eyes barely opened, but there was a desperate look in them as he reached out toward Link. The Zora coughed again, his breath still shallow, but he managed to lift his head slightly. His eyes met Link's, filled with urgency. I am Mikau of the Zora tribe," he rasped. "Please, will you hear my story?" Link nodded, and almost immediately, with an unexpected burst of energy, Mikau sprang to his feet. He reached behind his back and pulled out a fishbone guitar, strumming a powerful chord that echoed across the beach. Tal flinched from the sudden shift. Undeterred, Mikau launched into song, his fingers gliding over the strings with practiced ease. His voice, though weakened, carried emotion in every note. "I'm a proud Zora, a musician by trade. Me and my band, we got it made. The Indigogos were the stars of the show. But disaster struck, and now I don't know." He strummed harder, his words growing more desperate. "Our singer laid eggs, so strange and new. But then she lost her voice, what could we do? The pirates came, they stole them away. So I went to fight, but they made me pay." Mikau faltered for a moment, clutching his side as if the memory itself caused him pain. Still, he pressed on, his voice wavering. "They roughed me up, left me to die, drifting away, 'neath the endless sky. So please, brave soul, if you can hear, save those eggs, my end is near." As the final note rang out, Mikau stumbled, the last of his energy draining from him. He fell to his knees, gasping, and looked at Link with pleading eyes. "Please, save them," he whispered. "And bring peace to my soul." As Link knelt beside Mikau's still body, the words of the masked salesman echoed in his mind. A melody that takes pain and sorrow and seals it away. Slowly, Link reached for his ocarina, its familiar weight grounding him. He brought it to his lips and began to play the song of healing. The soft melody drifted through the salty ocean breeze, wrapping around Mikau like a gentle current. Though unconscious, a sense of peace washed over his face. Somewhere, in the depths of his fading consciousness, Mikau found himself floating in a dark, endless ocean. Then, through the dimness, he saw a familiar figure approach, Lulu, the Indiegogo's singer. She swam up beside him, her presence warm and comforting. Mikau blinked in surprise as a weight settled in his hands, his fishbone guitar. The moment his fingers brushed against the strings, a rhythm began to form, and suddenly, the rest of the band materialized around them, their instruments at the ready. A song began to take shape, one they all knew well. Lulu turned to him, extending her hand. He hesitated for only a moment before reaching out and taking it. Together, they walked forward, joining their bandmates as the melody swelled around them. Back in the waking world, Link watched as Mikau's body began to fade, his form dissolving into a soft, ethereal light. In his place, resting gently in the sand, was a mask shaped like Azora's face. Link stepped forward, carefully picking up the mask. He then turned to Mikau's discarded fishbone guitar, kneeling down to take it in his hands. With the utmost respect, he placed it gently upon the sand, bowing his head in silence. The waves lapped softly at the shore. The only sound that remained was the whisper of the ocean. Link hesitated as he held the mask up to his face. It felt smooth and cool against his fingertips, but the moment it touched his skin, a powerful force pulled it tight against him. His body tensed, muscles convulsing as a searing pain rushed through him. He clutched his head as his limbs elongated, his fingers webbing together, his skin shifting to a pale blue. His ears stretched into fins, and gills formed along his sides. Then, as quickly as it had begun, the pain subsided. Link exhaled sharply, his breath now deeper, his body lighter. He flexed his new hands, the sleek, aquatic form unfamiliar yet strangely natural. Tal hovered nearby, eyes wide. "Whoa, you really are him now," she muttered, circling him. "I bet you can even swim like a Zora." "Well, no time like the present to find out." Link turned toward the ocean. He took a running start, then dove forward. The moment he hit the water, his body responded instinctively, his legs kicked powerfully, his arms sliced effortlessly through the currents. With a flick of his fins, he darted forward like an arrow, weaving through the shifting blues and grays of the ocean depths. The water around him teemed with life, small schools of fish scattered as he rushed past, shimmering beams of sunlight filtering through the clouds from the surface above. The sea floor was alive with swaying coral, the gentle push and pull of the tide guiding his movements. As he swam, uncertainty gnawed at him. He had no clear direction, only the vast ocean stretching endlessly ahead. In the distance, Link saw a tempest storm raging. While stationary, it endlessly pushed the waters towards the shore and made them too treacherous for Link to swim through, even in his new form. Then, through the waves, he spotted something else, a raised structure standing alone in the water, its worn exterior jutting out against the horizon. Curious, Link swam toward it, finding a ladder leading up the side. He climbed, his wet feet leaving prints on the platform as he entered the building. Inside, the air was cool and filled with the faint scent of salt and metal. The room resembled a laboratory, strange instruments and devices lining the walls. A massive water tank bubbled in the center, casting rippling light across the ceiling. An elderly man with wild, graying hair and thick goggles looked up from a cluttered workbench. He squinted at Link, then broke into a grin. "Ah, Macau, you're back," he said with a raspy chuckle. "Have you recovered those Zora eggs from the Gerudo pirates yet?" Link stiffened. The man thought he was Macau. He remained silent, letting the old man continue. They took them deep within their fortress, past the high cliffs to the north. "Nasty business, that lot, but I know you can handle it. Time is of the essence. The eggs won't last long. You need to bring them here." Macau's last wishes resonated through Link, fresh on his mind as he stood in his new Zora form. Tattle flickered slightly, but made no argument. She knew where they would be going. Chapter 17. With renewed determination, Link jumped into the ocean once more, his sleek Zora form cutting effortlessly through the waves. The water rushed past him in cool, rippling currents, and he moved with a speed that felt both foreign and exhilarating. The words echoed in his mind, Macau's final wish, the fate of the Zora eggs resting in his hands. Tattle, floating alongside him, let out a small sigh. "You really can't help yourself, can you?" she muttered. "We could be looking for the temple here, but no, now we're sneaking into a pirate fortress." She huffed, but didn't argue further. By now, she was used to Link's unwavering drive to help those in need. As he swam northward, the waters grew murkier, the ocean floor shifting from vibrant coral to rough rock formations. Then, looming ahead, Link spotted towering cliffs with a massive metal gate embedded in the stone, a clear entrance to the pirates' stronghold. He stopped a short distance away, watching the water for any sign of an opening, but the gate remained shut tight. Link swam deeper, scanning the base of the cliffs. After a moment, he spotted something, a darkened crevice leading into an underwater cave where water passed. Without hesitation, he swam inside, pushing through the narrow tunnel as it twisted through the rock. The tunnel soon opened up and Link surfaced, stepping cautiously onto solid ground. As he moved forward, he emerged onto a rocky ledge overlooking the fortress. Below him, wooden walkways stretched between stone platforms patrolled by Gerudo pirates. They moved with swift, precise motions, their armor glinting in the sunlight, their blades resting at their sides. The fortress was alive with activity, guards watching the perimeter, others securing stolen goods, and in the distance, the faint sound of the tide crashing against the stronghold's walls. Tattle hovered closer. "Well, this is definitely a pirate fortress," she whispered. "Now the real question is, how do we get in without getting caught?" Link narrowed his eyes, scanning the area. He would need to be careful. If these Gerudo were anything like the Gerudo Link encountered in Hyrule, they were surely known for their strength and agility, and he doubted they would welcome an intruder. Tattle floated close to Link's ear, her voice low but urgent. "Hey, maybe ditch the Zora mask for now? You're kinda hard to miss like that." Link nodded, gripping the Zora mask and pulling it from his face. A rush of magic coursed through him as his body reverted, scales fading, fins retracting, and his familiar green tunic and Hylian form returning. He took a quiet breath before pressing onward, careful to keep low and out of sight. The fortress loomed around him, a maze of stone and wooden walkways, torches flickering against the walls. The scent of salt and damp wood filled the air as Gerudo warriors patrolled the grounds, their sharp eyes scanning for intruders. Link moved swiftly, darting between crates and barrels, waiting for the perfect moments to slip past unseen. He spotted an air vent along one of the fortress walls, its metal grate slightly loose. Taking his chance, he slipped inside, crawling on hands and knees through the narrow passage. The walls of the vent were rough and warm from the midday sun, the confined space echoing the muffled sounds of footsteps and voices below. After a few turns, he reached a small opening in the vent, where slivers of light poured through a grated cover. Voices drifted up from below, deep, commanding tones mixed with sharp laughter. Link peered through the grate, watching as a group of Gerudo warriors stood around a large, water-filled tank, their arms crossed in thought. "These Zora eggs will fetch a high price," one of them said, her voice smug. "Once we're rid of them, those fish people won't be a problem." Another scoffed. "You really think that? They might try something if we don't act first." "Their hands are full as it is," a third Gerudo replied. "Haven't you seen the ocean lately? That storm around Great Bay Temple is getting worse and the water's turning foul. Something's happening out there." "Well, whatever it is, it's not our problem," the first one said. "No one's getting past our defenses, and no one's stealing back these eggs." Tattle's small voice whispered near Link's ear. "Look up." Link shifted his gaze and spotted a wasp hive dangling from the ceiling beams directly above the Gerudo. Keeping his breath steady, he reached for his bow and nocked an arrow, taking careful aim at the hive. With a soft twang, the arrow flew straight and true, striking the hive dead center. A heartbeat later, the hive cracked open, and a furious swarm of wasps burst forth. The Gerudo barely had time to react before the insects descended upon them. "Oh no," one of them shrieked, flailing her arms wildly. "Get them off," another yelled as they bolted for the exit, shoving each other in their desperation to escape. Within seconds, the room was empty, the warriors' panicked cries fading into the distance. Tattle let out a small snicker. Link pushed against the vent grate, popping it open, and dropped silently into the now empty room. The tank of Zora eggs rested before him, their soft glow illuminating the water. The hard part was over, now he just had to get them out. Link peered into the large tank, watching the Zora eggs drift weightlessly in the water. They were smaller than he had expected, their soft, translucent forms pulsing faintly with life. The tank was too large to simply reach in, and there was no way to climb over the smooth, reinforced walls. Scanning the room, his eyes landed on a chest tucked away in the corner. He quickly made his way over and flipped it open, revealing a metallic device inside. He lifted it carefully, a hook shot. Tattle hovered beside him. "Huh, that looks useful. Don't suppose they'll miss this?" Without hesitation, Link aimed the hook shot at a sturdy wooden beam across the ceiling and fired. The chain shot forward with a whir, embedding itself into the wood before yanking Link upward. He swung over the tank, then pulled out the Zora mask and placed it on his face. He transformed into his Zora form and dropped into the tank, swimming effortlessly. Moving quickly, he retrieved the empty bottle he had received from the witches in the swamp and carefully scooped up the delicate Zora eggs one by one. Once they were secured, he swam to the surface and hoisted himself out, shaking off excess water. "I should have known you'd be back." Link froze. A Gerudo warrior stepped forward, already drawing her swords. The dim light of the torches flickered against her crimson armor, and her stance made it clear she was ready for a fight. Tatl groaned. Ugh, of course someone had to show up. The Gerudo lunged without hesitation, her blades flashing as they sliced through the air. Link barely had time to react, diving to the side as the twin blades carved into the spot where he had just stood. He landed in a crouch, his webbed fingers pressing against the cold stone floor. Tatl darted upward. "Watch out!" He reached for his sword, but the moment he gripped the hilt, he realized his mistake. His Zora hands weren't suited for wielding it properly. The grip felt clumsy, unsteady. The Gerudo smirked, already closing the distance again. With a sharp cry, she swung her sword in a wide arc. Link barely had time to react. His instincts took over, and he raised his arm in defense. To his surprise, the long fin along his forearm hardened, absorbing the blow like a shield. Sparks flew as metal scraped against his natural armor, the force of the strike pushing them both back. For a brief moment, they locked eyes, straining against each other. The Gerudo growled, trying to press her advantage, but Link quickly shifted his weight. With his longer limbs giving him extra reach, he twisted his body and lashed out with a powerful kick. His foot connected with her midsection, sending her crashing backward into the stone wall with a dull thud. She slumped to the ground, motionless. Link remained still, breathing heavily. The Gerudo didn't stir. Slowly, he straightened, shaking out his tense limbs. Tatl let out a short laugh. "Well, that worked out." Link exhaled, glancing at the unconscious warrior one last time before turning toward the exit, clutching the bottle filled with eggs tightly. Under the cover of darkness, Link moved carefully through the fortress, avoiding the torchlight cast by patrolling Gerudo guards. He stayed low, using the shadows to mask his movements, and when he reached the water's edge, he wasted no time. He pressed the Zora mask to his face, feeling the now familiar pull of transformation. His body shifted, scales forming over his skin as his limbs elongated. Without hesitation, he jumped into the sea. The water welcomed him, cool and weightless, as he propelled himself forward with powerful strokes. Link swam secretly until he made his way back to the concealed entrance he found earlier, and back into the open waters. The ocean was alive around him, small schools of fish scattered at his approach, and the glow of bioluminescent creatures pulsed in the darkness below. The rhythmic movement of his fins felt natural now, like he had always belonged to the water. Link surfaced near the marine laboratory, gripping the wooden ladder and pulling himself up. He stepped inside, shaking off the lingering seawater as the old man looked up from his work. "Mikau, you're back," the researcher exclaimed, squinting through his thick lenses. "Did you get the eggs?" Link nodded and held up the bottle containing the precious cargo. "Hurry, hurry." The old man gestured toward the large tank of seawater. "Before the sun rises, get them inside." Link stepped forward and carefully uncorked the bottle, releasing the Zora eggs into the tank. They sank gently to the bottom, nestled among the rocks and seaweed. As the first rays of sunlight streamed through the windows, the eggs began to shift. Their translucent shells expanded, stretching and unfolding as tiny forms emerged. Link stepped back in awe. The newborn Zoras wriggled free, their small, tadpole-like bodies illuminated by the morning light. But before he could fully take in the sight, a strange sound filled the air. The tiny creatures were singing, a soft, delicate melody that echoed through the room. The researcher clapped his hands in excitement. "Amazing! This is it, the song meant for their mother." Link reached for his ocarina, but as he lifted it, the instrument shifted in his hands, reshaping into a familiar fishbone guitar. He strummed the strings, listening closely, and began to play along with the melody. The tune imprinted itself in his mind, filling him with a sense of purpose, satisfying a desire from his newfound Zora heritage. The researcher, still brimming with excitement, pointed toward the open sea. "Macau, you must hurry. Go find their mother. Lulu needs to hear the song." Link nodded, gripping his fishbone guitar tightly before turning toward the door. He stepped outside and took a deep breath of the salty morning air. Without hesitation, he leapt from the dock, his body twisting gracefully as he plunged into the sea once more. The water rushed past him as he surged forward, each kick of his fins propelling him farther into the deep. The seafloor below was a vast expanse of coral and sand, the morning sunlight above casting shifting patterns on the ocean bed. Beyond a cluster of jagged rock formations, a massive structure loomed in the distance. Its smooth, curved architecture blended seamlessly with the environment, like a pearl nestled within the sea. Link swam closer, circling the structure until he found an underwater entrance. He slipped inside, emerging into a vast, open hall. The space was breathtaking. The walls were made of shimmering stone, polished smooth by centuries of ocean currents. The ceiling arched high above, with openings that allowed beams of sunlight to filter in, casting an ethereal glow through the water. Bioluminescent plants lined the pathways, their soft blue light illuminating the halls. In the center of it all stood a massive stage, a grand concert hall carved from the rock itself. The platform was adorned with intricate carvings of waves and sea creatures, and instruments were carefully set in place, waiting to be played. The air hummed with a quiet energy, though the hall remained eerily mostly empty. Zoras moved throughout the space, their sleek forms gliding effortlessly through the water. As soon as they spotted Link, they called out in greeting. "Macau, where have you been? It's about time you showed up. Did you give those Gerudo what for? Have you seen Lulu?" The Zoras all spoke at once, swarming him with concern. They seemed relieved to see him, but there was an underlying tension in the air. The bandmates of the Indigogos approached him, each expressing their worries. "Lulu still isn't herself," one of them said, shaking his head. "She won't say a word to anyone. We've been looking everywhere," another added, "but she's just disappeared." Hours passed as Link listened, searching for any sign of Lulu. The Zora spoke of the strange waters near the Great Bay Temple and the unease that had settled over the ocean. But no one knew where Lulu had gone. As the sky outside darkened and the waves grew restless, Tatl finally spoke up. "Link, we're out of time." He turned to her, and she gave him a solemn look. "The third day is almost up. We need to go back." Link felt the weight of the moment press down on him. He had learned so much, but it wasn't enough, not yet. "We have time. We'll find her next time," Tatl added, unlike herself. With a heavy heart, he closed his eyes and raised his instrument. The familiar melody of the Song of Time echoed through the hall, weaving through the water like a current. The world around him blurred, and the feeling of being pulled backward through time took hold once more. Everything faded to white.